numbers as she spent some time going and Googling people's Twitter followings and YouTube subscribers and all that type of stuff. So, but again, you'll see here the FA6D artist tab. Don't mess with it. Suggest artists. Please, by all means, everyone on this should put information here. If you could, please take the time to fill in the additional data regarding their reach. And those are the two public tabs right now on here. Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Sure.
So Kayvon posted something in the chat. And are we limited to immersion for onboarding these artists? Could you give a little more color to that, Kayvon?
Sure. So assuming that we're talking about music and songs, those songs have to be recorded, transcoded, and stored somewhere where RSong could provide that experience to the users. And today RSong uses immersion and the way immersion transcodes and decodes these songs. So and the player on the mobile app is also something that Immersion Network wrote. So when we're talking about onboarding new content or new artists, what is the scope? Are we talking about that we continue the same path with that these material would go through Immersion Network, they get processed and we play those through RSong, or are we talking about something else?
I think that was kind of my assumption, right? That anything we put on RSong was going to have the immersion codec, compression codec.
Okay, so can I jump in here? So I think we really need to kind of clarify the definition of what immersion what part of immersion's technologies we're talking about here. So right now, RSong, from my understanding of it, RSong's function is to present the entry-level immersive experience of immersion's technology in a two-channel format. So the immersion technologies surround, or they don't like using the word surround, immersive experience can be experienced in a two-channel format on earbuds, and we're presenting that with RSong, right? Mm-hmm. If we want to onboard many artists, it goes through possibly one of the most extreme bottlenecks ever invented, because it has to be mixed by one person in one studio, immersion studio, in that format, and then presented to the world. So we're not talking about being able to onboard 10,000 people unless Paul Hubert has superhuman abilities.
So I don't think we're talking right now about going down the path of creating the immersion mixes for all of these songs. I think it's really going to be a case-by-case scenario. So yeah.
And just to clarify, just so we have semantics right here, that's not referring to the codec, as I understand it. The codec, as I understand it, is a superior form of MP3. It's a compression technology that Immersive utilizes. They can apply that codec to just a standard stereo wave file, and as I understand it, that's something that they can do in mass numbers.
Yep, that doesn't. We don't need to go into any special mixings or anything of this sort.
Right. So if that is the case, then the RSong UI instantly has to change, because right now RSong is a way to present to the world the two-channel immersive sound experience, right? So RSong is no longer, if the intention is to onboard a whole bunch of artists in standard stereo utilizing the immersive codec, stereo codec, then RSong's UI is no longer one of showcasing the immersive aspect of immersion's technology.
Well, it could be both, though, right? I mean, right now there's like an A/B switch, so we would have X% that didn't have the immersion magic,
Mm-hmm.
and you could either then just gray out or say coming soon. I mean, there's a whole bunch of other stuff we could do, keeping the same basic pattern of the UI. And then when we do have offerings that will benefit from that immersion magic, they would fit right into the mobile app as well.
Exactly. For instance, if one of the people that's on the grid that's colored in orange that has a massive, massive following, if we have the ability to get the stems directly from those artists and do an immersion mix, that would be a really good benefit to us, because then those artists would be even more excited. Whoever owns the IP to that content, they'll be excited that there's a brand new version of the song available to the world. And the only place for that listening experience will be on RSong. So if we're able to go for 30 songs on this compilation, and even if we get 10% of those songs mixed with this unique mixing experience, we have reason for getting the artists excited to market and promote the opportunity beyond just participating at a level where they're experimenting with us how tokenomics and smart contracts work. The ability of utilizing smart contracts with music, I don't think I have not seen anybody who has actually pulled it off yet. And I ask this at every call. If someone could point to me who has done it, please share that information with me, because based on everything that I've read with all of the streaming platforms that are being built on blockchain, nobody's done it yet. And and this is the reason why I keep on going back to this one thing. We have RSong. We have all the components. We just need to demonstrate that we can make it work. And if we can make this very simple thing work, it opens up the door to a whole lot of other things for us.
Yeah. So I think, though, we're running out of time for any competitive advantage. So
yes.
I DM'd you this morning, Fabian. So Scooter Braun,
Yes.
Justin Bieber's manager, along with all this other stuff, and he just tweeted yesterday. Very soon, he's also invested in Spotify, right? And he tweeted yesterday, very soon, he's going to have a blockchain platform for music based on the Ripple XRP protocol. And he's somebody who is well funded. So
I know Ian has his hand up.
Yeah. Hey, can someone walk through the steps of how you would actually add high fidelity, just stereo content to RSong, including visiting the using the API or the transcoding portal to just to add content? What are the steps?
Who would like to handle that technological question?
Yeah, so sure. We talked about this last time, and I think it's worthwhile to go through it again. What Kayvon was imagining is that there's a kind of a lobby, sort of a holding place where artists can upload their content before, and then we would go through the process of verifying with them that the content that they have uploaded is in fact theirs, or they have the rights to it. And then that would be on storage that we have access to. Then we ship the content over to immersion's facilities, and the immersion transcodes that and then ships the content back to us. Now, just so that people are aware, there's no data pipes that are fat enough to kind of do this at scale. So the way this is done typically is to ship disk drives around. So that's what we would be doing. We would we would have a holding area where artists upload their material to disk drives that belong to us. We would then physically ship those disk drives over to an immersion facility, and then Immersion would run the encoding side of the codec on that, and then ship the drives back to us. From there, we can use the asset induction capability that Kayvon has written to get it up into the chain, and to associate the metadata with the assets. Does that make
It doesn't
sense
make
so
any
far?
sense to me. One question I have about that is that I've heard the explanation of the disk drives in regards to Immersion when describing massive catalogs from huge streaming services, but I've never really heard that how we do this on a kind of a smaller scale. Let's say that, you know, I'm a single artist, or even a single label. I would imagine that there must be a way to just upload some waves. Like, the idea of throwing a couple waves on a disk drive just confuses me quite a lot.
So I'm not talking. What I'm saying is that in order for it to be cost effective for us, we set up a holding area, right? So this is, and it's not just that one artist sends in waves, but we imagine that there are many artists who upload material, and when we reach a certain size of content, then we can ship it over. Of course, prior to that, if there's, you know, if it's only a small amount, we can use any manner of data sharing capabilities to do the encoding. But when we're talking about how to do this at scale, so if we're doing this at scale, we have a sort of holding area. Artists of all walks of life upload into the holding area. When we hit a certain amount of data that needs to be transcoded that has been verified, we then ship that to Immersion and then get it back. Now, of course, this is parametric. If we're still operating at a scale that's, you know, that we can handle with Dropbox or some other file sharing capability, we can easily do that. That's not a problem. But the point is, what do we do at scale? So does that make sense?
Okay, I guess I'm getting it a little more, but I'm trying to understand the idea of maybe just kind of starting on a smaller grassroots level, starting to kind of get people from the public to go through KYC and then start to upload their music. Are you describing some type of a minimum threshold that Immersion requires in order to kind of utilize their codec?
No, I'm not. How do I? It's very useful to see these, to walk through these kinds of communication barriers. So let's look at it from the point of view of do we want, from basic security requirements, do we want the general public to have open access to Immersion's cloud service? I think the answer to that is no. So we want the public to be able to upload audio content to a holding area that is maintained by RSong. And then in that holding area, so this would be on S3 or any of a number of storage services that we could provision for this. So we provide a website interface, a web-based interface, so that the average artist can upload audio content, and that's then stored on a storage site that we have provisioned. Then when we on a artist by artist, case by case basis, we would have to go through some kind of KYC to make sure that the artist is in fact, or the person that is acting to upload the content is in fact a rights holder for that content.
Yeah, and that still has to be worked out, right? And you know, I want to say, you know, that's going to be some human capital to build that infrastructure.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you know, there are APIs, right, that can identify your song and know that you've changed all the metadata to say it was your song, but it's really a David Bowie song.
Mhm.
And, I don't know if we want to put that in the first release, but, ultimately we would, because
Well,
that's
there's
how you scale, right?
Yeah, Ned and I spoke about it for a while yesterday because there's certainly systems that exist in the world that if we can find what the appropriate one would be to associate with our song, that would prevent anyone claiming that David Bowie's material is theirs. Like, there are systems that already exist that we just need to find what the right fit would be for our song, and see how it plugs into our system. And that's one of my assignments for myself over the holidays, is just to read into a lot of those offerings that are there.
Right.
But
So-
for the first release, like Greg is saying, the songs would sit there waiting, and then some human resource would do the verification. I mean, if we're talking about 30 songs or 100 songs over the course of a couple weeks, that would be the cost of doing this.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I do want to say that again, when we did our private sales, everyone acknowledged that the KYC effort was going to be a pretty big effort, and we were daunted by this. But the payoff for the extra effort was the establishment of some trust relationships. And I submit that the same thing is quite likely here, and it's an important part of what we need to do in order to kind of seed or establish the network. The human capital effort that we make at the beginning to establish, face-to-face relationships with artists that are uploading content is going to have a big payoff later. So I don't believe that we want to be faceless automated system at the beginning. And I think that even as we get into larger and larger scales of this kind of offering, we still want to use some kind of social technology, social interaction as a part of the provenance thing, because it's also about the creation of community and the sort of social aspect of vetting the material. So yes, we can call these automated interfaces, and that's good. But we also need to not be an automated faceless system. And it's not going to serve us well over time. That's my feeling. And I'm open to discussion on this.
I 100% agree with Greg on that. And I believe that we can look to examples when we talk about, like last week when Fabian kind of left us off with the question of how can we make it easier for the user. I also wholeheartedly agree with Fabian that we have to make it as easy as possible for the user to get into this. And there's all sorts of bottlenecks here, not least of which is converting fiat to rock and back. But the idea that we start off with getting attribution right and getting KYC right is important for so many reasons. And the idea that we start off from the outset building a social-based system is also absolutely vital. And one example I can give of when artists are willing to go through the steps of doing this kind of thing is the very successful aspect of the music industry revolving around songwriting. If you write a song and you want to get paid, you have to go to your PRO and you have to enter in all the information with your PRO about who wrote the song. It takes a while. You go through the process, and then you're at the position where you can get paid. So I don't see that being a major issue. Artists are very used to doing that kind of a thing. So to me, it's not a big deal. What I'm still kind of confused about right now is the bottleneck getting from us to the encoding process at immersion. I'm still very confused about the idea. I understand we're going to do the KYC. I understand that we're going to gather all the WAV files. But what I don't get is why we have to kind of gather up a certain clump of WAV files before we can send them off to immersion. I don't get that.
So
Network bandwidth speed.
yeah, basically it comes down to the cost of shipping and the cost of how do I say this? In general, they're going to it's going to be cost effective to run things in batches, right? Because what um, you want to fire up like a bunch of these devices. I don't know how to call them. You know, they're essentially little programs that ingest the audio content, crunch, and squirt out the new encoded audio content. And because you don't have a lot of interaction, you can kind of do this in an embarrassingly parallel fashion. So yes, at scale, we could do this, and we could probably set. I'm sort of at the initial scale. We can, but the transfer part of it we could do over Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever was reasonable. But when we get to larger scales, we can't do that anymore. There's no data pipe that's gonna fit that need. Does that make sense?
Well, I still don't. I guess I kind of what I don't get is it's more of a question for immersion. I guess is I'm confused as to why they don't have the technology to be able to just take a single WAV file and convert it into their codec and spit it back to us.
They do, right? It's just it's the question of what's cost effective, right? It's like
If you wanted to encode like the 1,000 top movies on Netflix, and you were doing that from your home, and now you had to go to the Netflix server, and download 1,000 movies to your hard drive and run a program, it would take you forever, right? For one or two, it's fine. And I think that's what we're saying. For one or, some artists, they want to upload a couple songs, to get to the 30 songs. The standard bandwidth of your internet connection will be fine for that. So we could use Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever.
Hey guys, Kayvon wants to share his screen because he has a example.
Okay. So, but if we have 100,000 songs that we're going to get from a catalog, and we're going to use that to seed RSong, the bandwidth required is just too great for standard bandwidth. So it's much more cost effective and cheaper and faster to just ship a hard drive that's already loaded with those songs. Is that making sense?
Well, again, we're getting back to the question of 100,000 songs versus one. I just don't see why.
Well,
I guess it costs a lot of money.
Let's give Kayvon some.
Thank you. And Greg, please jump in if I didn't catch your point correctly. Just as we were talking, I put this very simple diagram together. It just helps me understand better when we have something to look at.
You just put this together?
Yeah, just now. So basically, we got two use cases where a single artist wants to upload a single song. And in that case, I think the consensus is yes, we can accommodate that. We could run the validation and verification on this holding area that Greg was talking about that we discussed last week. Then some internal packaging goes on, and then once all these criteria are satisfied, we could transfer that to Immersion Studio. Now that's a single song, and that's doable. I don't think there is any problem with that. But the one that we're talking about shipping actual drives is when we want to process a big catalog. In that case, that catalog still needs to be uploaded, or at least we need to have a link to where that catalog is, and then run the validation and verification. And then the transporter will basically look at it, and it creates a bulk package. Now, how we transfer that bulk package is it could be shipping it via FedEx or UPS because it's too big to to transfer it that way. And I've been in cases where it actually was faster to ship these things via UPS than it is try to do a file transfer, just the sheer volume of the files. Or it could be something that, okay, we could still transfer it via in real time because this catalog is within a certain size. So I don't think we're saying that all batches need to be shipped via FedEx, for example. We're just saying that there will be a threshold that cost-wise and time-wise doesn't make sense not to do a FedEx transfer.
Yeah,
Did I
and
capture that?
I think that's exactly right, Kayvon. And then with respect to just the running of these the running of the transcoding program itself. I mean, just think about any even a service industry setting, right? I mean, typically what will happen on the back end, right? If you're loading, you're packaging stuff for shipping, right? But you tend to do things in batches. So it's like you asynchronously take in the requests, you kind of do some triage on the requests, and then when you have enough to do a certain thing, then you run them. And just the reason is this is more like physics than it is to anything else, because if you have a batch, then it's more efficient. You run the same thing across all the batch, and then you squirt it back out. Yes, you can do it one at a time, and that's perfectly it makes logical sense. But typically these things are batched. All right, it's like what you do on the back end of most systems. You batch things up. For example, in almost all networking applications, sorry, you end up doing kind of box carring or batching system. I think Kayvon, you implemented a box carring or batching just for the deploys to the chain, right?
Yes. Yeah, and exactly. That batch is just 4 songs today, or 3 assets today.
Yeah, exactly. So, because this is what I'm trying to say is the batching part is just kind of a normal thing. Now and the size of the batches, you want to tweak in order to get a proper turnaround. So, for example, you don't want an independent user, an independent artist, to have to wait 3 weeks while you fill up a batch before you process the song. But you'll tweak it so that there's a certain number in a batch that makes it reasonable to go ahead and run the processing. But that any one artist who's made a request isn't waiting forever for there to be some threshold to hit before they get their music turned around. Does that make sense, Daryl?
It makes sense, I guess. I'm just wondering how. I'm wondering whether there will ever be a method as simple as encoding an MP3 from immersion, because I hope so.
Well, I don't know how to just say. Yes, you can do a single one. That's definitely doable. It's just it ends up being cost effective if you let's say you don't immediately respond. Let's say you have some artist, Sally puts in a song. You don't immediately respond to Sally. You say, Sally, your file will be available in the next hour. Why? Because you're also getting things from Bob and Frank and Anna, right? And so you're waiting until you have enough of a batch. Then you run the transcoding, and then you put it on the service. It's something like
Yeah,
that.
I think an hour would be acceptable for many artists. Weeks,
Yeah.
probably not.
Yeah,
But
no, exactly right. Their expectations are going to be roughly equivalent to what they expect from SoundCloud.
and I understand one aspect of the technology, the way it's been explained to me from immersion, is that it actually requires a lot of computing power
Yes.
to encode their technology, because it's quite advanced.
Mm-hmm.
And but I've also had it explained to me that they do have server farms already in place that can do quite a lot of processing quickly.
Yeah, how is the transcoding metered? Is it by compute time? I mean, does that factor into why batching the jobs is more cost effective?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I had a text come in that distracted me. One more time.
Yeah, so immersion charges for each transcoding job, and I was asking how exactly that is metered and whether there are cost savings there for doing the batch jobs.
I don't have a ready answer, but I'm certain that there's just some basic physics that make it more efficient to do things in batches. So yeah. So there would potentially be some significant cost savings doing that.
So all of that said, I think I'm going to keep working on what I need to do around the project. I'll be following the ball with Ned. A handful of the RChain employees have a document that I authored around this, and we will see where we can go with all of this come next year. And if anyone has suggestions or artists that they want to include for this, for the compilation, for the first version, please add it into the suggest artists tab on the Google Sheet that I shared with everybody.
Okay. Yeah.
Is
Yeah,
this
I
meeting
think
recurring next week?
I think we can take the next 2 weeks off unless people want to be speaking during the holidays.
I will be out next week. I guess we could do the week after. We come back on Wednesday, right?
Let me see here. No, I will not be around next week, Friday the 28th, and Friday the 4th. I'm available.
Yeah, I could do Friday the 4th.
Friday the 4th, I think, is yeah.
Let's resume Friday the 4th.
Yeah.
Anyone have any other comments?
Well, I mean, I was really enjoying the conversation about the ingestion. I think we got a little bit down in the weeds, when we were talking about just like the size of batches.
Yeah, I think all those things will be solved as we just have to start building. That's all. And I also just want to thank Kayvon for sharing that diagram, and yeah, thank you, Kayvon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, from my perspective, I'm sorry, Greg, please go ahead.
After you.
It would really help me if we could talk about the metadata, like more than just talk, like have a working session and actually look at the metadata that we have for these songs. I mean, that's like it's like a chicken and egg thing. From my perspective, I can't really do search till I got a good understanding of what our metadata is. I can't really do a lot of stuff until we we kind of work on that. For RSong, I just made that up. I literally went to a couple of websites and based on what I had learned in previous application development, I put that metadata together and it works. But it's very minimalistic, right? Because we were doing a proof of concept. So I think that would go a long way, at least for me.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And so one thing is, kind of there in the background or to the side is mycelia. And so Fabian's been reaching out to them again because he thinks that they actually have some kind of metadata infrastructure set up already. And so we want to, while don't necessarily have to use what they did, we don't necessarily want to have to reinvent everything. And so I think we have a meeting scheduled for the second week after we get back.
Yeah, when we're back from the holidays.
So, yeah, so I agree, Kayvon, we're definitely going to need to, come up with a metadata schema.
Yeah, I think speaking with Kim about their any specific choices they've made about metadata is a good one. We should also talk with maybe some of the other folks at Merlin, folks at, I don't know. What, Daryl, you probably have a good sense of the metadata you think is useful.
Yeah, I think mycelia is certainly, we should definitely keep up our communications with them. They're forging ahead. They just released their alpha. In fact, apparently today I'm going to be scanning my identity into mycelia, the Creative Passport. So there's some movement going on there. So I think it would probably behoove us, perhaps Kayvon and Ned and whoever else, to talk with them, specifically Mark from mycelia, who's basically the CTO. And as far as talking directly with Merlin, we have a couple connections with Merlin at Resonate. I have a personal 2-degree separation from the CEO of Merlin. So I definitely think that at the right time, we should be talking with them. They're definitely interested in some type of a universal registry, the golden goose that everyone's been trying to achieve over the years. So there's the GDRB who made their attempt years ago and got squashed by ASCAP. There's been many attempts, but I'm kind of hopeful for mycelia myself.
And I think another resource is Steve Turnage, the work that he did with WeedShare. They have a pretty good understanding of what the metadata is.
Yes, well, Steve Turnage has really turned me on to the company, I think it's Soundways, that makes RIN-M, which is they're attempting to kind of do a bunch of things. But one of the things they're working on is it's done is a plugin that you put into your DAW, so that at the birthing point of the work, that's when you enter in all the metadata, and it gets sent to Soundways' centralized server. This is the issue I have with Soundways. But yeah, there's definitely some initiatives out there, and I think the whole idea is that we're supposed to all be working together. So I'm hoping that is something that happens.
Yeah, I agree. So but I think we have enough resources within this group that we could have a good first guess. And I do think it has to be an iterative process. We may discover things as we do more of this that makes us rethink how we do metadata.
Mm-hmm. I so agree. Let's just get going and just start doing it, and start making mistakes, and then start to solve them.
Yeah, exactly. That's
You want to minimize your mistakes, though.
yeah.
Well,
No,
like Greg has always been saying, we started in a small case enclosed section first, and work out the mistakes there and kind of expand out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we made big progress this year, and I think we can make a lot more progress going forward. I think, is Nora still on the call? I saw her.
Yeah, she's there. Before we hand the mic over to Nora, I just want to say on the comment of working together and metadata and everything, I just encourage people to just write. There's one thing that tends to happen is there's just a lot of conversation, but no one actually writing anything and generating documentation and Excel docs and real business documents. So I really want to encourage everybody that, if someone wants to be like, I have ideas around metadata and how all this stuff comes together, write it. Just put it on paper. That way we can circulate it and we can see how we can integrate it into a larger plan, because, it's one thing, we've had a lot of great conversations, but I really, really encourage people that if there's something, that you want to inject into the RSong platform, just to please write it down. That way we can start building up the master plan of how this thing is going to come together.
Yeah, totally agree. Actually, maybe Kayvon, over the next week or two, and maybe you already have it, the metadata that we already have for RSong. Maybe we could get that like in a Google sheet, a Google spreadsheet.
Yeah, no problem there. I can provide that. I also just wanted to interject one more thing. My request is, I'm not asking that I need to have a complete set of metadata before I could do anything. Not at all. It actually works better, like kind of like the diagram that we just had. Just a couple of bullet points, couple of words. Like, how do we want to search? What are some of the search criteria? Mm-hmm. Once we know that, then we could see what type of metadata do we need to be able to capture this search request in a way that we could code around it. That's by metadata, that's what I really mean. I don't mean some comprehensive music catalog metadata. Is I'm looking for your help to be able to codify what your search request is, for example. Does that, hopefully that, I don't know if that makes sense, or?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I love it. It's demand driven. We just the data. We need just the data that support certain features and functions.
Exactly. Because the way we put this thing together with the rolling, with the contract, this metadata can change anytime. It's not, there is a certain limit to everything, but it's not like once we declare it, we can't change it. We could certainly change it.
Yep.
But it's this chicken and egg thing. It's a starting point. I much prefer to know how we want to search and what we want to search than try to engage in a crusade of defining what all the metadata under the earth is going to be for this.
Yeah, agreed.
Hey guys,
on that note, it's staff meeting. Happy holidays to all. Merry Christmas to all.
Happy holidays. Happy and healthy,
everybody.
Yeah.
Catch you all here in 2 weeks.
Peace on earth.